Hello everyone, you'll see this morning that we've come to America's breakfast capital, testing out the old adage from the ancient fathers that America runs on Dunkin', and sure enough, it does. You may not know this, but my kids, when they come over from London, always want to do the Dunkin' run. Very often after church on a Sunday, they'll go along the road, along Locust Street, to our nearest Dunkin' Donuts, just to test out the fare. So we thought we'd do breakfast from Dunkin' this morning. We're still in the Easter season, and it's probably a good time for us to think not only about the resurrection of Jesus, but the way in which the resurrection of Jesus bears upon the reality of life, and in particular the reality of death for Christians. We live in a society that is anti-death, death-denying. Funerals are no longer funerals, they're celebrations of life. That's the kind of secular expression that's used. The Christian approach to death and dying, however, is quite different. A funeral for a Christian should be a time for lament. It's a time to grieve. It's a time for a degree of anger against what has happened. In death, there's been the dismantling of something which God made, a good thing which God made. The soul has been separated from the body, and the body is now to be committed to the ground or to a crematory fire in waiting for the resurrection day. That's not a thing to celebrate. That is a thing to grieve and mourn and lament about. When Jesus was at Lazarus' tomb, even though he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, he cried tears. The women who buried Jesus were crying at the tomb. When in the new heavens and the new earth, God wipes away our tears. That's when he wipes away our tears. And so I think it's important to try and recover the ability to grieve, but not to grieve as those who have no hope, to shed tears, to be angry at death, who is our enemy, to remind ourselves of death's presence. You know, most churches in the world, over the centuries of their development, were surrounded by a graveyard, so that whenever you went to church, you walked past your sisters and your brothers and your aunts and your uncles and your grandparents and your great-grandparents buried. It was a reminder that in the midst of life we're in death. And it's only with that facing reality, unlike what the world does when it has its celebrations. We look death in the eye and we remind ourselves that Christ is risen from the dead and that he is the first fruits of those that sleep, and that one day there will be a shout of command and the trumpet of God, and the dead shall be raised, and we shall rise immortal. And what is corruptible will put on incorruption, and what is mortal will put on immortality. And we will be raised. Seeing the reality of death, we are able then to anticipate the joy of our resurrection. I think that's a good way to live our lives. Realistically, hopefully, joyfully, in the right place. So I pray that might be of comfort to some of you. Perhaps a particular person today who is grieving or facing the reality of death. Pray that God would give you the grace and the strength for that. God be with you.